What up guys, Sinapse here, and today I want to give some tips, some advice for guys who are gaming only in English, alright? I don't want you to think that this channel is only me going in constantly in Japanese, because a lot of the times when I talk to girls I do it in English, and that is for the specific reason that you have a distinct advantage in your own language, right? When the girl, if she's Japanese or whatever, if it's not her first language, she's going to be on the back foot, which means she has to use more thought cycles, more brain processing cycles to think of what to say than you do, okay? And what this is going to do, for the most part, is going to have an equalizing effect on your game, right? Because the girl has been socialized into game just by the fact that she's a girl, she has boobs, that men will constantly come and talk to her and try to gain access to said bobs, right? So she's gonna have experience throughout her life, years and years of experience, thousands of guys approaching her, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, right? Over, ever since she was probably 13 or 12, even probably earlier than you would like to imagine, she's had guys hit her up, right? So the fact that you speak English and the fact that she's kind of on the back foot, she has to think about what she wants to say before she says it, can be a huge advantage. Okay, so I don't want you to think that Japan is only for people who speak Japanese. Definitely not the case. You can have a massive success only with English. Okay. Now, what's the disadvantage of speaking English? Well, girls who are not instantly into you, a lot of girls in Japan have this shut down kind of response, whereby they shut down when English is spoken to them, right? And it's not because they don't speak English usually, it's because they're not confident in speaking English. They're not confident in it, right? They don't believe that they can make sentences, and they're afraid, and they feel a little bit of stage fright. Sort of like, imagine if you were instructed to stand up in front of a public audience and speak. It might make you a little bit nervous, even though theoretically you should be able to speak in front of one person or two people or three people or 500 people, right? So it's the same kind of thing. They get a little bit nervous when confronted with an English speaker. Most of the time, how you can mitigate this is by ignoring the fact that they will say, or they always say, they can't speak English, okay? That's the first kind of tip. Every girl, if you speak English to her, she's almost always gonna say, I don't speak English, or, not really, right? Just ignore this, carry forward, right? You can kind of flip it on them too. You can be like, well, everybody in Japan learns English, right? You flip it on them too, like, what, do you not study? Like, did you spend all day skipping class and drinking in Shibuya or something? Or what are you doing with your life, right? Come on now, study. So, yeah, you can flip it on them. Again, ignore it for the most part and just continue talking to them, right? First tip. Second, the fundamentals are incredibly important. Now, one of the reasons I love gaming in Japan, one of the reasons gaming in Japan is so powerful for setting a foundation upon which you can build the game in other areas, or other countries, other cultures, other languages, is because you're forced to focus on the fundamentals. In Japan, you're forced to focus on your body positioning, your eye contact, and your voice tone, among other things, to such a high degree, right? Because that's one of the few, that's kind of common denominator among humans, right? That when you hammer that in, when you get that down, you're going to be so good when you go to Thailand, when you go to Philippines, when you go to Europe, when you go to Turkey, wherever you go, right? That fundamental baseline, because you've worked on it so hard through game in Japan, through speaking with people who do not share a common language, you're going to be so good at it. Because a lot of people come from the US. I get students, they come from the US, they say, look, I gamed in the US, I'm fine there, I'm fine talking, I'm comfortable around girls, I just need to learn how it works in Japan. The biggest problem with those guys is that they almost always, especially coming from an Anglo country, the US, UK, Australia, something like that, they focus too much on the verbals of the situation. So they focus way too much on trying to be witty, trying to be funny, trying to make jokes or puns, trying to talk, trying to make everything that they say golden or worthwhile or funny or interesting. Okay? This was a problem of mine as well when I first came to Japan. I imagined it would be better to say nothing than to say something that wasn't amazing, okay? And my game really skyrocketed when I took my threshold for saying cool stuff down, right? In other words, I made it so that I was okay to say boring or ridiculous shit that doesn't even make sense, all right? Okay, so that's going to be point number 2, is lower the bar for the verbal content that you produce, okay? It's all about relatability and it's not about wit, right? In other words, you can have all the wit in the world, and if she's not understanding it, it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't matter at all. Just make it relatable, just make it something she can understand, even if it's literally retard level, I ate a sandwich today, right? That is way better than like some sort of crazy witticism, whatever, right? It's way better to be relatable than to be witty or funny or interesting, okay? Because she's not going to be if she doesn't understand you, she's not going to understand the witticism at all. And all that you come across as is uncalibrated. 3 is going to be speak slower and use gestures, all right? This is very important, very crucial, but if you go to somebody and you're like, hey, do you love hamburgers or what, right? They're going to, if it's a Japanese girl, she's going to be like, honey, right? She's not even going to understand. But if you're like, hey, do you like hamburgers or hamburgers, right? She's going to, almost like 99% of girls are going to understand that if you say it like as slow and deliberately as I did. Whereas the first way, about 5% of girls are going to understand that, okay? So you need to realize that the way, if you're going to speak English, if you're going to demand that they speak English, you need to make it very relatable, and that means you make it slow and use gestures. All right, very important. Probably more than you might be used to. Definitely more than you might be used to, right? English speakers, especially when they're speaking with each other, are used to speaking quickly as I'm speaking to the camera now. But when you're if you're not used to being with people who don't speak English very well, you're going to speak at the same speed, same everything, and they're going to be like, what is going on, right? So you have to slow it down so that they understand what you're saying, okay? Next tip is going to be to use all means, right? By any means necessary, all right? Now, a lot of times this just means Google Translate. If you're using Line to communicate with girls, there's a Line translator robot, right? You just add it to the chat. It's going to translate everything from Japanese to English and then vice versa. Beautiful. If they literally speak 0 words of English, gestures. I've hooked up with girls who spoke 0 English and I spoke 0 of their language. It's possible, right? All you got to do is use gestures. Again, focus on that relatability, all right? So by any means necessary, communicate with that girl. And any means, again, doesn't have to be verbal, as I mentioned. Doesn't even have to be gestures. It could be just dancing with the girl and then pulling her out. Physical movements are communication, okay? So keep that in mind as well. Next is to pick your locations, all right? So if you are gaming only in English, you're gonna have a lot more luck with English speakers in places like Roppongi, Azabujuban, Omotesando, maybe Ebisu, right? Places like this, as opposed to deep kabukicho, right, where you're gonna get a lot more girls who don't speak English, all right? So keep in mind the places that you're gaming. Now, never limit yourself in your mind. Never be like, oh, I'm not in the right neighborhood or I'm not in the right area, I can't approach. Do it anyway, approach anyway, as always. But if you're looking for more English speakers, right, go to where they are. It does help a lot. Finally, using your Gaijin card. So your Gaijin card, in other words, is sort of like a using whatever kind of card you have. It's an advantage, right? And the fact that you're a gaijin, the fact that you're a foreigner, means that behaviors that are somewhat weird will be accepted because you are a foreigner. They're just going to be lumped under this, like, well, he's foreign, he's weird, he behaves in this way, therefore it's fine category. Alright? So it's important to realize that and use it strategically. Alright? So the better you are able to at least try to figure out what is the proper social way to act in this country, and how can I get away with or break the rules to my advantage. You never want to break rules unless you know that you're breaking them, right? So realize the double-edged sword of KY and Gaijin Card that you can play, right? KY on the one hand means Kuki Yominai, a person who can't read the atmosphere, a person who's awkward and uncalibrated, in other words. And the Gaijin Card is the freedom, the license you are given to behave somewhat crazily, alright? If you behave too crazy, too over the edge, in some situations you're gonna put the girl off, right? On the other hand, you don't want to be super Japanese, and you're never going to be super Japanese, so you might as well take advantage of the liberty you are given to act in crazy ways, right? And if you can rope girls in to your vibe, they're going to act in crazy ways with you, which is obviously good. Alright guys, those are just a few tips for gaming in English. Hope you enjoyed that. I will see you guys next time.